Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce the release of my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. If you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level in 2021, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Aditya here with me on the show, otherwise known as AJ. AJ is a breathwork instructor and fellow podcaster who has been deep in the podcast trenches with me since way back in 2015 when he also started his own show, My Seven Chakras. Super excited to finally connect here with you on Positive Head. AJ, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Brandon. Really great to be here.
Yeah, I noticed for so many years, whenever you go to, Apple or iTunes, it used to be iTunes, now Apple Podcasts, and it would say, fans of this show like this show, and your show would always come up. So I'm sure we have some people out there listening who have checked you out before, and it's cool to weave together some podcast magic today.
Absolutely. Likewise. I also, when I was checking out the iTunes charts, I would say, people also listen to Positive Head. And, deep down, I always knew that, this meeting is going to happen. It's just about
inevitable.
Right?
Yes. Divine timing. Well, I'm going to start off with the same predictable question that I always start off with. And it is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
What's my passion?
Mm-hmm.
My passion is to experience states of bliss, states of calm, and also peak states. As human beings, we go through so many different emotional states, right? Like sadness and challenges and resentment and anger, but those are not fun. And so for me, it's about understanding what is the true human condition, right? And from what I have learned so far is this quote in Sanskrit which says, Sat Chit Ananda, which sort of means that the universe is eternally joyful. And if the universe is eternally joyful, and I am sort of a mirror of the universe, then essentially I should be joyful eternally. And then the question is, how do I be joyful? Well, one way is to just be in stillness, but sometimes that's hard, right? To be in stillness. And the other way is to realize that our body and mind are connected. So if we move our body in certain ways, maybe through cold exposure or by just shaking or through breathing, we are able to influence the mind and experience that beautiful stillness, that joy that is our birthright. And so to that woman in the elevator, I'll probably do a quick breathwork session, or maybe talk to her about the joy that we all deserve in life.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So one of the things I would like to ask you to share is a little bit of your backstory. I always like to give the listeners context for who they're hearing from and how you arrived on this path that you are currently on. Whatever feels relevant to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes you live a backstory, but you tend to forget it because so many things are happening, in your life.
Yeah.
And it's
like totally different chapters. So many different chapters, It's like, hold on, was that me that happened to? Like, who was that guy?
Yeah. And the way that I come to know the man, the boy that I was is through my journals. And I still remember I think it was 2010, maybe 2011, um, when I was doing a retail job. This was in India. I'm right now in Vancouver, and I used to be based in Mumbai, India. But I was doing a retail job, and it was a company that I liked, but the hours were really bad because I was standing all day long, working on weekends, coming back home late, eating at odd hours, and in a group or in a team that wasn't really supportive. So there was a lot of toxicity going on. And I was in a place where I was feeling stressed and anxious and not knowing, how to experience more happiness. And so that took me down a path of really trying to uncover what the human condition is all about and learn more about meditation. But for me, meditation did not come easily. I wasn't just able to, sit down and experience silence. And through some search, I came across chakras, and I came across these beautiful energy vortexes that are in our body, and the power of visualization. Because I actually lied down once and I visualized the chakras. They're radiant colors all throughout my body, and you won't believe it, but within a few minutes I was able to experience a stillness and a calm and relaxation throughout the body that I wasn't able to feel so before. And I was like, wait, is there a conspiracy? Because I've never come across this about the human body before. All this while, I thought we were just our physical body, and at a certain point, we've got our brain that creates thoughts. But what is this? What is this subtle energy? And that
Right.
curiosity, that fascination, took me down, the rabbit hole of subtle energy and spirituality and energy healing. And deep down, I thought, why not start a podcast? Because I was listening to a lot of podcasts in the finance and marketing space, entrepreneurship space. And I was like, why not, go on this journey of asking these profound big questions to people who've been there in this space for decades. Let's see where this goes. And, that sort of ended up with me starting the podcast, My Seven Chakras.
Wow. Yeah. That's one of the things that I have experimented with. I used to do it a lot before, lately I've kind of fallen off, but before I would start recording is take a moment and, deep breathing and visualizing all of my chakras and opening each chakra, and sort of set the intention of, okay, universe, higher self, I'm an open vessel. Please allow what wants to come through and what will be most beneficial to the listeners to come through. And I actually haven't been doing it as much in the last maybe 6 months or so, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because it instantly made me think of, that how quickly, I mean, as someone who moves very quickly, and slowing down has always been, well, maybe more challenging for me than others. And it's something where even just taking 20 seconds to do that, I would notice a difference. I would instantly feel like, wow, that really, it really does shift you in quick. Yeah. So it's such a simple yet powerful thing to do.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, one aspect is the relaxation part of it, right? Because when you visualize it, or when you do these mantras, you do feel relaxed. You feel energized. The other part is just this realization that, what? There is a mystery to life. There's some aspect of life that we don't quite understand yet. But there are things like lucid dreaming and astral projection and energy healing and all these beautiful, like, psychic perception that, the amount that we know right now is probably just 5%, and there's 100% there. And as you might agree, the more that we go down this path, the more that we realize that, we don't know a lot of stuff. And so just this, it brings up a sense of excitement, a sense of adventure within that, what, I'd like to find this out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like a game of cat and mouse, the way I see it, with your higher self or source or the universe, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, once you start to turn your gaze in that direction, it's like, oh, look, Brandon, AJ, they're paying attention. What you seek is seeking you. It's like, oh, okay, you're looking my direction. Okay, I'm going to wink back at you. And then it starts like turning into this sort of this game where you're intrigued. Whereas maybe before that point, you're just like stumbling around, not even considering all the things. Yeah, you said 5%, if even 5%. It's like we're like babes in the woods, you know? I mean, the fact that most of society doesn't even acknowledge or a huge percentage of society and you know, science and whatnot doesn't acknowledge a lot of these subtle energies like chakras and these phenomenon like psychic phenomenon. And of course it's there in different ways, but it's still sort of, you know, brushed under the rug, although that's, I think, shifting and it's coming out and it's, you know, I mean, compared to 20 years ago, you're just like the laughing stock of the scientific community. And now, you know, you have things like, well, I think we're in a hologram and this is, you know, a simulation and all of those things are starting to really come to the forefront. But, you know, compared to where we'll be in 100 years, what's the irony of it is, I think we'll look back and they'll laugh at us that we weren't, you know, even aware of, you know, can you believe they denied that, you know, things like this had existed? And it's going to be kind of like a ironic flip flop, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And, you know, even if you go back in time and think about some of the great thinkers, you would see that, you know what, they had a fascination for these things. They had a fascination for all things vibration, all things energy, whether you look at Tesla or even Carl Jung. Like Carl Jung, I've heard, you know, in addition to, you know, his thesis and his study of the mind and psychology, he also used to conduct workshops on Kundalini. Did you know about that?
No, I never heard that.
Yeah. And that was back in the day, right? So people would be thinking like who's this guy? What is Kundalini? What is chakras? But in a way, it sort of, you know, paved the way for these kinds of dialogues in the West.
Yeah. I mean, he actually said at one point that, you know, spirituality and science are sort of two sides of the same coin or something to that effect. I actually quoted it and I'm forgetting the quote off the top of my head, but yeah, he definitely pointed to, and it's almost like if you're exploring consciousness, you can't help but be sucked into at least entertaining these ideas. And I think once you really allow yourself to suspend disbelief and, you know, explore with curiosity, open mind and heart, then you know, that's when it's like buckle up your seatbelt because you'll be shown a lot of things.
Absolutely. I think it's a profound question to ponder upon because we haven't found an answer yet, right? That is the ultimate hard problem of consciousness is, you know, okay, so we are made up of organs and tissues and cells and molecules, but at what point, right? At what point is there a jump from this physical body to this consciousness? And no one's able to fathom or understand how we have these thoughts of anger and you know, love and appreciation and compassion. Like no amount of science is able to go into that person's head and figure out and measure it. That's interesting and exciting.
Absolutely. And, you know, I love that your primary focus is you're big on breath work and even cold exposure type stuff, which I've been experimenting with really for the first time very recently. Breath work quite a bit in the last year or so, more than ever. And, you know, your breath is such the sacred link between worlds, I feel like. I mean, even if you break down, you know, birth and death, what do you get when you combine those two is breath. Mm-hmm. It's like the anchor between dimensions. And, you know, so many people seek expanded states through plant medicines or psychedelics or any of those things. Meanwhile, breathwork is like right there and can blast you into that state so powerfully without any of the negative repercussions or side effects or, you know, any of that stuff. So that may come from other substances. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. And you actually are a breathwork instructor, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could tell me a little bit about your journey with breathwork.
I mean, so I'd say that breathwork was planted into my life at various points. When I was young, and especially in Mumbai, I used to watch this channel where there was this yogi who used to, early in the morning, do yoga and breathwork and teach like hundreds of thousands of people. His name is Baba
Wow.
Ramdev. And, I wouldn't watch the whole thing. But sometimes when he used to do alternate nostril breathing, or whenever he used to do, this Bastrika, heavy breathing, it was fascinating to see how this man was able to, do this, and which led to a lot of relaxation and calm. But in those days, the respect and the appreciation that I had for yoga wasn't as much as compared to
Mm.
what it's right now, if you know what I mean. And the reason for that is, India has a vast heritage, right, of Ayurveda and Tantra and yoga. But because of the fascination for the West, we ended up at a certain point forgetting our own treasure.
Right.
Right. And so, so I was exposed to Baba Ramdev. And then later on, when I started my podcast, I ended up from time to time interviewing various breathwork specialists like Dan Brule. And they would, teach me about what the breath is and how these various traditions all throughout the world had some component of breathwork, whether it was Qigong or whether it was pranayama in India, whether it was shamanic breath. And then I learned about how the whole rebirthing movement came about and holotropic breath as well. And then what happened was last year, I think last year was all about breath, right? It was all about breathing or lack of, because you had people wearing masks and there was a lot of
Right.
right challenges going on. And then you had the whole, I forgot what the name of that person was, but uh, there was this movement called Can't Breathe, right, in the US.
Oh, right.
Right. So that was, I think the theme for
The
last year,
George Floyd. You're talking about the
the
George Floyd.
George Floyd protest, exactly, that
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunate event. And I also was facing a lot of challenges with my emotions and stress. And so I was doing this podcast, and through some synchronicity, through, maybe I set the intention or whatever, but I came across Soma Breath. And I had interviewed Neeraj Nayak on my show, I think about a year back. But they reached out, and I ended up experiencing their 21-day breath protocol, Soma Breath. And what ended up happening was I liked it because it mixed a couple of things. Firstly, it was pranayama, which I had experienced before, and I was doing some techniques. It also mixed the science part of it. So not just, do this breathing, but why are we doing this? What is
Mm.
intermittent hypoxia? What is the Bohr's effect, right? What is the influence of pH when you breathe and how that influences your physiology? So that was really fascinating. Plus the music, right? One of the first practices or spiritual experiences that I came across when I listened to was binaural beats. And when you listen to binaural
Ah.
beats, I agree, right? Your brain relaxes and you're able to experience these deep states of consciousness. And so this type of breath work mixed binaural beats with the science, with the pranayama, which sort of made sense for me. And so that made me want to, go down the instructor path, because I was sharing this with my friends and people in my community, and people were experiencing shifts and changes. And yeah, that's how I became an instructor. And in a way, things came a whole circle.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you've been instructing then about a year or so then?
Yeah, I'd say about 7 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Really, continuously each and every week, one-on-one sessions and group as well.
And how frequently are you doing breath work, instructing breath work? How intimately tied to your daily life is it now?
Yeah, so I do a membership. We do our group sessions on Zoom on Sundays and Wednesday evenings. So on Sunday mornings, I do like a awakening session where people. It's usually a 75-minute long session where we go through various techniques like shaking and breathing in beats, and that sort of sets people up for the week. Especially on a Sunday morning, you get a dose of energy, and you're really looking forward to the week and the people that you're going to meet. Wednesdays are more sort of like a yin sessions to help people go to sleep, relax, unwind. And so we're using a different or different techniques for that session. I do it in the morning. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm working on my morning routine these days. So waking up at around 5 o'clock, and I mix breath work with some movement. So I do some kettlebell, some breath work. I also use some mudras to experience meditation. Then I might read a book as well as do some journaling. So that sort of sets myself up for the day and gets me ready.
Wow, 5 o'clock. Impressive.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I followed Robin Sharma. Not sure if you've followed his work, but he speaks a lot about the 5 a.m. club, so to speak, right? And so I'm experimenting with it. I've put myself up for a 60-day challenge. And the way this works is if I do 5 days, but if I end up missing out on a day, then I start from scratch. And so I'm experimenting with that right now and seeing how this works. But that the morning times are the most tranquil, the most quiet, and the most relaxation, relaxing. And I enjoy it. It does a lot for me.
Yeah. How long have you been experimenting with that piece now?
So for the 5 a.m. Morning routine, I've been experimenting for the last, I'd say 2 months. Yeah, I did it sometime last year. I had a streak of 90 days or so, and I did a couple of episodes on that. But I sort of fell off the bandwagon, and so I'm going back, to that challenge with not too much of expectation, because sometimes when we set up a goal, right, for ourselves, we attach too much to the outcome, and I'm just doing this full of open curiosity and from a mindset of learning what I can learn from the session. And so if I fail, quote unquote fail, I try to be curious and say, why did I find it hard to wake up in the morning? Okay, maybe
Right.
I did not do a proper anchoring the previous night, which is so important, right? Like, putting out your t-shirt, your shorts that you're going to use in the morning for the jogging or for the movement, or also setting the intentions the previous night, telling yourself you are going to wake up at 5 a.m. You are going to feel refreshed and charged up. You're going to have this wonderful cup of hot coffee, right? And that, I feel, really helps. Once you set the proper intentions at night, it makes you wake up in the morning.
Are you finding that you need less sleep doing this, or are you just going to bed earlier, or how's that work?
I'm finding that I, on average, need about 6 hours of sleep, six and a half hours.
Wow, that's so good. I wish I could say that.
Yeah. I mean, the funny part is there was a phase, last year, actually, towards the end of last year, where I was not getting quality sleep, right? So I would wake up feeling like groggy or like a headache. And what has helped me is building my evening routine. So in the evening, maybe, like I said, setting the intention, setting up my, clothes that I'm going to wear for the morning. So anchoring, but also sometimes a nice warm shower, washing my face, flossing, some things, the small things that you do in the evening helps you sort of relax and wake up.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing. And I know a lot of people have talked about, I've experimented some with getting up, 5 to 6. And I'm someone who, I find if I have less than 8 hours of sleep, I really feel it. I mean, 7 I can get away with. Sometimes 6, I would definitely feel it. And I also know that's a story, right? And it's something that I've subscribed to. So therefore, abracadabra, I create as I speak. So it's funny because I just was saying last night, I went to bed pretty early, and I was saying to my partner, Karen, I was saying, well, it's super early. Well, maybe we'll get up at 5. And then I got up like 7:45 or something.
Right.
So I didn't quite make it, but I feel rested. But, it's one of those things where there's so much that can be done in a day. And especially when you're, got a lot that you want to achieve, it's such a powerful thing to get, here it is by, 8 o'clock, you've had a 3-hour day already and done all these things that are so supportive to your mental and physical health. And so I really, really admire it.
No, I think you touched on a very important point, which is, we live in in an age where you see something on TV and automatically that is, the entire population should do it, right? So we see like intermittent fasting. Everyone should do intermittent fasting. We see wake up at 5 a.m. Everyone is supposed to wake up at 5 a.m., right? We see a new diet. We see something, a celebrity is wearing something. Everyone should try a Peloton, right? So it's like, for me, it's like you don't have a one size fits all. We are all different in beings. We have different requirements. We are different stages of our life and we have different needs, right? And so at the end of the day, my journey is all about listening to my intuition and finding out what I need at this point and not comparing myself with somebody else's journey. At the end of the day, it all comes back to self-love, right? And so for someone listening out there who says, you know what, I need 7 hours of sleep. I need 8 hours of sleep. And that is probably the best thing for you because you are listening to your intuition and you are loving yourself. That's pretty much what it boils down to.
Yeah. Fully agree with that. And that brings up such a great topic that I know you love to speak on, which is the importance of self-love. And, I always say it's the number one thing we're all here to learn. We have very, as you just said, wildly varying paths. However, self-love, I believe, is the number one thing that's on everyone's list because until you really get that down, you're operating from a handicap in a sense. And it's also the journey of, we're all fractals of source, right? There's one of us in the room. Well, at the end of the day, if it's all one, like so many of us are realizing and talk about incessantly, it's like, okay, well, then that means that the journey of source, God, the universe, higher self is a journey of self-love. It's always about falling in love with the self. And so obviously as fractals of source, we really need to focus on getting that, that piece down if we're going to have a solid foundation from which to spring into, other expansive states and, our ultimately attain our greatest and grandest version of ourselves. So curious, what your thoughts are on all that.
Yeah, it's such an important topic. It's like the other day I looked in my mirror and I looked at my face and I noticed there were like 4 silver hairs. And I'm experiencing some hair fall. And it brings about certain thoughts in your mind, right? You're getting older, timing's running out. And then there's some critical thoughts about you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, right? And I think this is something that everyone goes through. But the point to realize is that you have gone through so much. The fact that you're still alive, you've gone, you've survived through the pandemic. You're listening to this podcast. It means that you're not a normal average being. You are a resilient human being. You're a champion of your cause, and you're taking small steps towards empowering and supporting yourself. So that itself is a mind shift to realize that you are on the path of self-love. For me, affirmations help. I love my life. I love my body. I love my face. I love my hair. Even though the default mode network of your body, your ego is telling you otherwise, if you keep saying these things, words can be spoken into reality. That can, make you feel better. And the third thing also in terms of self-love, I find that a self-love practice can really take it to the next level. So for me, the ultimate form of self-love is to do a nice oil bath. Not sure if you've heard of that, but it's an Ayurvedic practice called Abhyanga.
I have actually.
You have, right? Okay.
I have
So
heard
for
of this,
me, when I apply this oil, whether it's coconut oil or whether it's castor oil, but when I apply it on my skin, I'm not just saying it, I'm doing it. And
Mm.
and touching my own body and skin, and and then doing some breath work, right, for like 10 to 15 minutes in the evening, relaxing my whole body, allowing myself to experience this feeling of oneness, having like a nice golden nectar, drink with some turmeric, with
Hmm.
some honey, with some milk, right? Nourishing the
Some
body,
golden milk.
warming up the body, boosting up the immunity, and then finishing it all up with a nice warm shower.
Mm.
When you come out, you just don't say self-love. You feel nourished and
Yeah.
cared for all over your body. And I think one thing is to know it, the other thing is to do it. So I tend to schedule it. I say, okay,
Yeah.
these are the goals I have. These are the things that I'm going to do during the week. And to reward myself, I'm going to do it on a Saturday evening. So I'm deep down in my mind, I'm looking forward to that event of
Hmm.
like maybe some journaling, maybe some breath work, maybe some having that golden nectar and the oil bath, and then the warm shower. So I
Mm.
think self love is all there is. That's you can't talk enough about self love.
Yeah, it's so good to make the time. And
Right.
I was doing breath work a little bit ago, and a little workout before we jumped on
Yeah.
on this call to record. And that's the thing that I was actually saying to myself. It's like I'm thinking, if I would go into, as I'm doing breath work, thinking about, oh, I got to do this, oh, I got to do that, oh, this person never got back to me, I need to follow up, oh,
Yeah.
and I start into that mindset of get things done. It's like, oh, hold on, you have all
Yeah.
the time in the world. You are a master of time and space. You are
Right.
actually creating more time by making the time to create a practice of self-love in some way, shape, or form, and self-care. And so
Yeah.
that's been a huge one for me on my journey. And those listening have heard me talk about it a lot. It's like, so you're a great one for me to talk to, because you're really, you're doing it at a high level. And for me, it's like, I really see the difference. It's like just making 15 minutes, and then it's like, okay, and what are you doing energetically in that moment? You may have moved the ball forward in ways you'll never know with the
Yeah.
things that you want to achieve. It's like how often when oh, okay, I decide to take the vacation, and
Yeah.
after working so hard, and then I get the call that I was, that is equivalent to 2 weeks worth of work in
Yeah.
what it brought in the form of abundance, or pushing the needle forward, in my
Yeah.
own vision of what I want to achieve. And so I think that is, especially for those of you out there who are really just stressed and up to your ears and to do stuff, that's like like the Osho said, if everyone should meditate 20 minutes a day, unless you're too busy, you should meditate for an hour. And it's
Yeah.
so true. Like that, there's actually, it's not just like a clever saying, that actually
No.
is going to
Yeah.
create more of what you want through an avenue and path that actually seems counterintuitive to getting things done, right?
For sure. And I can sense that, the people that listen to your podcast are very creative, right? Very entrepreneurial. And they want to,
Mm-hmm.
make something, whether it's starting a new business, getting a new job, or something like that. And if you think about it, at least in my life, most of the ideas that I've received, right, for my business, for my podcast, or anything, they were not when I had scheduled time and I was, doing. It was when I was taking a shower, right? Or when I was out in nature. You just get those downloads and synchronicities of those ideas when you're in a more expansive state. And from a scientific standpoint, the reason for that is, what I've learned is, our brain has what is called the default mode network, right? So these are the parts of our brain which uh, help us form our sense of self. And so all throughout the day, they're always comparing ourself to our future, ourself to our past, and saying, you know what, things are not going as well as they should compared to 2 years back, or where you need to be 2 years down the line. And they're also comparing ourselves with the world around us. And
Mm-hmm.
so what these things like psilocybin, whether it's magic mushroom does, is that it calms this default mode network. It calms
Mm,
this ego side of us. And it also makes connections from disparate parts of the brain. So you get multiple connections, you become more creative, and most importantly, you open up to the fact that you are not separate from the world. You are indeed part of this network, this cosmos, this universe. And just that feeling is wonderful. It's blissful. You don't need to worry anymore. And you have all the ideas that you can download from the Akashic records. It's open to you. You just need to receive it.
mhm,
And
mm.
so there's a study actually that compares the effects of soma breath with psilocybin. So 22
Wow.
minutes of breath work has similar effects compared to what you would experience with psilocybin, which is calming the default mode network. Now, the benefit is that when you finish a breathwork session, you can just wake up and go about your day. Whereas if you're in a beautiful, sacred, magic mushroom ceremony, it takes some time before you can, get to do work in the normal world.
Right. Right. Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our sponsor, NOOM. NOOM is a unique habit changing solution that helps users learn to develop a new relationship with food. And it's not a diet. No food is considered good or bad. As we talk about on this show all the time, it's all about proper balance and having good habits. And Noom just teaches you how to look within your own mind and make better decisions for yourself. Sounds familiar, right? It's based in psychology, eating better to feel better. It focuses on the story that we tell around food and how to feel good about our choices. And they make it all super easy to do with a minimal commitment of only 10 minutes a day, which is essential for someone like me with so much on my plate. Pun intended. So, if you guys would like to try out the cognitive behavioral approach to losing weight that has led to 80% of Noomers finishing the program and 60% sticking to their goals for at least 1 year, head over to noom.com/positive head to start your trial today. That's spelled NOOM.com/positive head. I mean, what do you have to lose except outdated habits and perhaps a few extra pounds by signing up for the trial? Once again, that's NOOM.com/positive head. Check it out. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I haven't, you've mentioned soma breathing multiple times, and I haven't explored how does that differ from, what is the sort of the the normal or the unique factor to how that particular breath work practice operates.
Sure. And so basically, it draws from pranayama, right? And the idea is
Mm-hmm.
that there's no one breath technique that works for all. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on what outcome the group or the individual is looking for. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, let's say you're coming back from work, you're a bit tired out, stressed out, you just want to relax and unwind and go to sleep. So, then there is a certain type of breath technique, which could be like a 4 by 8, which means you breathe in for 4, breathe out for 8, because then you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, calming down the sympathetic nervous system that creates stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let's say in the morning, you want to go to work, have a get together, or maybe a brainstorming session. You want to be alert, and maybe you're having coffee, maybe you're not, but you want to be in that state where your body is slightly more on the activated side. So in that case, you would probably do a more energized breathing, thereby really flushing yourself with that oxygen, but also ensuring that you're producing that energy. Then there's another technique for when you want to be more mindful, more balanced, right? So in that case, you want to activate what is called your heart coherence, right? Where your heart is sending a very harmonizing signal all throughout your body, so that you're able to write for an hour and put out your best work. So in that case, it would be like a 4 by 4 technique or an 8 by 8 technique, which is like the heart coherence breathing. So the first thing is understanding that there are different breathing techniques for different outcomes, right? And so the other thing also is these um, types of music that is played along with the breath work
Mm-hmm.
that really enhances the experience because it's based on brainwave technology. So it helps your brain go from a beta down to like a alpha or even gamma. And so you're helping yourself relax to a multitude of ways. One is the breathwork technique itself, then is the music, then is also the guided meditation that is usually accompanied, which takes you into that state. Whether it's first acknowledging which state you're in, because a lot of times people will avoid acknowledging that they're even stressed or anxious. So, first is recognizing that, okay, you are stressed, you are anxious, but then also changing that state and re imprinting those low vibrational thoughts with feelings of gratitude, feelings of joy, feelings of ecstasy, and things like that. So I think it's definitely a combination, and also breathing in beats. So you listen to the music, there's a beat, and trying to repattern your breathing to suit the beat. And
Mm.
the studies have shown when you breathe in beats, you're able to also enter into a state of heart coherence, which has numerous benefits.
Very, very cool. So I'm sure there will be some people who are interested in possibly joining. I'm assuming that your breathwork classes are open for people to sign up and participate in.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I do group sessions as well as one-on-one. But yeah, more than happy to set up one if people are intending to experience it. Because no
Cool.
amount of words that I share right now will be equivalent to
Right.
the actual experience of it.
Well, what I love about it is like there's probably some listeners out there who are very intrigued by the plant medicine or psychedelic kind of
Right.
journey entheogens and haven't really went down that path.
Yeah.
And yet, you take something like breath work and it's like, oh, here is there's no question in your head, is this good for me or is this not? Is this,
Right.
and it can take you into the same realm as you were just, pointing out. And I think it's such a great bridge. And ultimately, I mean, everything has its time and place. So
Yeah.
I don't like to use the word superior or better, but in some ways it's certainly, like you said, it's simpler and you don't have to, you can get up afterwards and then go about your day as opposed to
Yeah.
what just happened to me during that 8 hours. And I need another 24 just to process what I went through.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the other thing also, because you see a lot of different types of breathwork styles, and some of them focus mainly on the ceremonial, cathartic type of experience, right? Where you start shouting, where you start crying, and when you're releasing all that trauma that is in your body.
Yeah.
But the thing is that that type of breath work, you can't do it every day, right? And so the breath work that I do has that. So you can go into those states where you're releasing, and you're helping unload the stuck trauma that is stuck in your body and in your molecules. But also there are some breathwork techniques that you can do on a daily basis, right? So let's say
Mm-hmm.
your goal is just longevity, right? And so when you hold your breath in a certain way, when you do these practices like Nishesh Rechak Kumbhaka, you're systematically, lowering the level of oxygen in your bloodstream for a short period of time, and that creates an environment that is conducive to the proliferation of stem cells from your bone marrow, because the
Mm.
stem cells in your bone marrow, they don't like high levels of oxygen, which is why they're hiding in the niches in your bone marrow. But when you are able to reduce the oxygen level through this breathwork practice and through breath holding, and this is backed by science and evidence, but the stem cells are able to proliferate and go to places that need regeneration. And
Mm.
the science is trying to figure out how do we take the stem cells from one part of your body and put it where it's needed for regeneration. And now you have
Mm-hmm.
a practice that is thousands of years old,
Wow.
and you can do it without any side effects, just through the power of your breath. And that's just one of the benefits, which is stem cell regeneration. The other benefit is obviously high altitude training. Like a lot of
Mm.
these athletes go high up in the mountains and they wear these masks, and they do the intensive training, because the benefit is that the body in these low atmospheres of oxygen is able to increase the level of red blood cells and hemoglobin, so that when the athletes come back to the normal levels of altitude, their body is actually able to produce more energy, so they are at an advantage compared to other athletes that might be competing with them. The good thing about this breath work is, through the breath holds, you're able to get the same effects as these high performing athletes. And guess what? How it's gonna influence your work, your home, and also your passions, whether it's your business or something that you'd like to start. You just get more energy, and you're able to calm your body when needed.
Wow. Very cool. I hadn't heard the stem cell thing, but it's really, really fascinating. Some of these
Yeah.
ancient, simple practices, like, we kind of go around, we dig so deep for complex answers. And then here's something as simple as, working with your breath to achieve so much. So really,
Yeah,
really
exactly.
cool. I'd love to talk a little bit about one of the things that I've been doing lately that I've always been someone who is notorious for seeking comfort. And
Yeah.
I've been called the king of cozy more than once. So
Yeah.
I recently had a friend over, and he was talking about cold exposure and
Right.
and ice baths and things like that. And we were in my very cozy the very cozy hot tub at the Mystic Manor, and meanwhile the pool is like ice cold, and he goes
Yeah.
over and gets in, and so I'm like, okay, I'll do it, and I got
Yeah.
in, and then it was like, okay, now stay with it for a while, and
Yeah.
just kind of, there's 4 of us, and just leading us through like this sort of experience in the cold water. And it was really interesting, because then all of a sudden, you get into the state where you get into a super relaxed state, or even moments where you feel warm. And it was really interesting to me. It's not something it's never, like, breath work intrigued me. A lot of the things intrigued me. The idea of an ice bath never really intrigued me that much until, and this wasn't an ice bath, but it was, it was a pretty cold pool, and, in the middle of winter, although it's not like winter where you're at.
Right.
And so I'm curious what your kind of, how deep down that rabbit hole you've went, and what you've gotten from it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love cold exposure, and I find whenever I get an opportunity to do some more cold exposure, I've shared it in my podcast as well, and it's so wonderful from time to time to listen to people saying, "You know what, AJ, I've done a 2-minute cold shower this morning." But cold exposure has numerous benefits. Firstly, like you pointed out, when you come out of like a cold shower, or maybe you immersed yourself in the ocean where it's cold, maybe like a ice, like an ice box that you've set up for yourself, you do feel a surging energy from inside. You feel like an electric, pole
Mm-hmm.
that is generating energy and warmth as well. And it's fascinating how the human body is able to respond when put in conditions of stress, but temporary stress, right? And so one of the benefits of being in the cold is that your body creates what is called brown fat. And so brown fat, the reason why it's brown is because it has an abundance of mitochondria. And so what it means essentially is that the more cold you're able to embrace, the more mitochondria you have, the better you're able to create energy throughout the day. Plus, you'll notice that the reason why people tremble and shiver is because of white fat, the normal condition. But the more you go into the core, the less you shiver and tremble. That's what I've also noticed. And that's because your fat is being converted into that brown fat. You are becoming superhuman, so to speak. And the other thing is also like when, just because I do cold exposure doesn't mean that I do not get scared or a little bit, worried, because it's pushing beyond your comfort zone. So
Sure.
every time that I make a mental determination to enter the cold water, my brain is creating new neural pathways in terms of how to confront and face fear. And that translates into any other difficult or challenging, endeavor that I might engage in my relationships, or maybe in my business, in the world overall, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. But just by, getting into that cold shower in the morning, you're able to show up in your life in a much better state. So your level of resilience also increases. So that's the second thing. But also the third thing is also when you are in that cold water, right? There's so many things happening inside your body. Like you have an abundance of blood circulation because your body is figuring out what's happening over here, and also
Yeah.
your immunity, goes up because you learn to calm yourself down in the midst of this change of environment, and so that's the other benefit also. So I'd say numerous benefits, and whenever, like, I've recently started a men's circle in my group because I've found that
Hmm.
really to be therapeutic for other men. And whenever I get an opportunity, I try to include these experiences, these adventures, right? So as you might agree, we're all living our own versions of our hero's journey, and by going into the water, we in a way are having an adventure and coming
Yeah.
back with something to learn and share with the tribe. So in that sense also, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's a great example of one of those, I actually compare this to breath work sometimes in the sense that when you're breathing deeply
Yeah.
versus breathing shallowly, it's
Yeah.
everything is a reflection of everything. And so, if you're upset or angry or stressed, your breath is super shallow, right?
Right.
And if you're really concentrating on breathing deeply, you'll find that's what calms your nervous system, and you can't really be angered or upset because that deeper breath is a symbol of your ability to cope with the situation at hand.
sure.
It's like you've got much bigger muscles. You can carry a lot more of whatever's going on and handle it with grace and ease. And I feel like the cold exposure thing, when I was doing that just last week, it felt like a similar thing. It's like, oh, you're able to cope with more. This is a symbol of your own expansion to be more graceful with whatever's going on in your life. And and quite honestly, this last week I've really done better than some of the previous weeks. I had so much with releasing the golden key, and leading up to that, and just like working long days, and just sort of not spending time on self-care as much. And as soon as I started remembering, and what's great about these sorts of things, if we ever fall off the wagon, with any of these things, like you even referenced earlier, it's like the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up for it. It's like every moment is another chance to turn it all around. And, how do I do things, even if it's little things that, taking 10 minutes of breath work, or getting in the cold pool, or taking a cold shower, for just turning on the shower at the end of your hot, I'm going to take an extra 3 minutes and just turn it to completely ice cold. And how is that a symbol of your ability to expand and deal with more? And, the fact that it creates even physical changes, like you said, new neural networks in the brain, all of that is so good and so healthy, and has such a ripple of impact in ways I think we can quantify in some, and some even beyond that, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it all boils down to the realization that we don't need a lot in life. It boils down to leading a simple and minimalistic life, because we realize that, what, we don't really need that warm water all the time. Also, if
Mm-hmm.
you're into intermittent fasting, you realize that you don't need to be eating all the time. There was a time where I used to be having like a breakfast and a lunch and maybe snacks in between and then dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And things weren't great all the time because I used to have these allergies and sniffing and stuff like that. Then I came across intermittent fasting. I just skipped breakfast because that was not very convenient to like set up
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, and just having like 2 meals in a day. And I noticed numerous benefits, and that are
Mm-hmm.
proven by science. And so the point that I'm trying to make is, firstly, right, I don't say that I'm anyone's guru. The guru is the person who's listening to this show right now, because you have all the
Mm-hmm.
wisdom and all the knowledge that you can ever need. I'm just shining the light on you so that you recognize your own wisdom from within. And secondly, the realization that, what, we don't need all that much, and all we can do is feel grateful for everything that we have in our own life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. We really don't need that much. And
Yeah.
so often in life, you end up going on a journey of, just coming back to the realization, whatever it is that you're exploring, that less is more. Yeah. And, and finding that balance with all things is so key. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'd love to switch gears a little bit. As the listeners know, I absolutely love hearing stories of synchronicity or, positive paranormal stories, nice. Anything like that, serendipity, anything like that up your sleeve?
Oh, for sure. I'm a big believer in synchronicities, serendipities, intuitive hits, right? Mm-hmm. Firstly, I do see 1111s a lot. And maybe your listeners can agree with this, but just the fact that in 3 minutes it's going to be 11 again. But I see 11, whether it's like number plates or this and that, and it sort of reminds me that the angels or your guardians or your ancestors are watching over you, and that you're on the right path. But in terms of a specific synchronicity, so here's the synchronicity. On my phone, on the Google Podcast app, I just subscribe. I don't subscribe to too many podcasts. I just happen to subscribe to 2 of them. And a couple of weeks back, I noticed that there were new episodes on both these podcasts. And both these podcasts, the topics were human design. And I thought to myself, well, that cannot be a synchronicity. I just subscribed to 2, and both of them happen to be human design. And so that took me down the rabbit hole, because I realized that, I did do an interview about a few years back about human design, and it made me want to search once again and see what my human design is based on where I'm at today. And then I realized that I'm actually a projector. I believe it's 2/6. And I read it, and it all seemed to make sense in terms of where I'm at in life. And so according to a projector, you need to, you're not the type of person who's going to go out and do and make things work. You hold your energy and you wait for an invitation, if that makes sense. And an invitation can come from anywhere, which is why you need to be mindful and do your meditation and breath work so that you're able to notice the invitations in the first place. But you got to wait for an invitation. And so that sort of brought to my mind that, I've been doing this podcast for 5 years, and for the most part, our downloads are increasing, our, listeners are increasing, people are enjoying the content. But then in terms of reaching to that state where we need to be, I'm not there yet. And maybe, for every person, we never get there, right? We never feel that we're there yet.
The journey never ends.
The journey never ends. But it brought into my mind the emphasis of the invitation and being alert and open to that invitation. So in that way, I've noticed that this was a clear synchronicity, because, the chances of just 2, podcasts on my phone, I open the phone, boom, human design. And so I reached out to the guest who I had a couple of years back, and I said, please, can we have the show once again? And he was like, yes. It felt as if he was waiting for my email. And we're going to do another episode, human design.
Well, can I add to your synchronicity?
Yes, please.
So I have, I had someone reach out last week. I've done, 1,400 episodes or so of the show with the help of the lovely Erica Middlemith and Alexa and, others, and so many guests. And it's one that I've talked about for many years. Like, I should do human design at some point. I haven't ever went deep down that rabbit hole, but it seems like one that would make sense to do. And I just was, actually it came out today, as of this recording, I was on the Highest Self podcast with Sahara Rose. And if you guys want to go check that out, that just came out, and me on her show. And I guess a mutual friend or a friend of hers, somehow was talking to her, and Positive Head came up. And so she reached out and said, hey, human design is my thing. I would absolutely love to come on Positive Head. Now I'm sure AJ, you probably are similar. I get so many solicitations from people to want to come on the podcast. And so, but this particular one, hey, Sahara, I was talking to Sahara about you, and I feel like I should be on. And it was an instant, like, intuitive yes. So I literally just scheduled for this time next week. I'll be recording for next week's episode, and it's all on human design. And at 5+ years of doing this podcast, I've never done a human design episode. So
what are the chances?
I know the synchronicity, just like they always compile. It's really, really cool. And it's all such a cool reflection that's happening on so many levels, and it never ceases to amaze me and excite me.
And it's wonderful when you have those intuitive yeses, right? Because sometimes a decision you be like, you got to think about it and this and that. And when those decisions are like, I got to think about it, I don't say no. It's just a lot of times it's not right now, immediately.
Yeah. Right.
Because then you're waiting for that yes. You're waiting for that invitation from source, from spirit, from the universe, from your guides to say, boom, yes. And when it's that intuitive yes, you know it. And it's as if the angels are, chiming. Yes, you gotta do it. And so I'm glad that you listened to your intuition about human design.
Yeah.
Because I'm fascinated about it as well.
Yeah. So you said it's a guy that you're recording with?
Chetan Parkin.
Okay. Yeah, this is Aaron Clare. So, I have to check out your episode and see how that goes. So, yeah, I've never went deep down that rabbit hole of, exploring, but I love those things like, like, I don't know if you've ever looked at your gene keys by chance, but that's another one that's really fascinating. Richard Rudd, I had him on the show a while back, and really, really cool. I would highly recommend Richard Rudd. And even I could make an intro for you if you'd like. He's just like,
that would be amazing.
He's one of my favorites. Like he just like, he's so tapped in, and everything he writes is so poetic, and the way the whole sort of system came to him in dramatic, very paranormal, magical fashion, decades ago. But it's all based off of, the potential in your genetic code, essentially. And it ties into some I Ching stuff but definitely his own sort of thing that he's developed. And so similar in some ways, I think, to human design.
Interesting. Because a couple of years back, I had gone for this quantum touch workshop. And at that point, somebody had this book about gene keys. And I do remark it was a pretty large book. But it is. The thing was planted in my mind. And I'm definitely, open to learning more. I mean, I think you would agree that, the best type of guests that I love interviewing are the ones that do talk about science, but they add a little magic to it also, a little wonder, a little curiosity that makes you go, I never knew this about the universe,
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's very, validating, I think, to be able to not go too much down one direction, but to see how the two worlds are merging. I believe, science and spirituality are doing a dance unlike has ever been done before. And it's it's like the sum becomes greater than the equal parts. And so I'm with you on that. It's really, really cool to see how things are advancing and evolving, and how the perceptions around these things are really shifting, and science is playing a very interesting role in that. It's truly two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Science is spirit. Spirit is science. You just need to know where to look, and hopefully, as humanity, we create principles. I mean, magic is based on principles that we don't understand yet. That's what I think.
Yeah. I think as Nassim Haramein said that, something to that effect. He would be another great one for you to have on if you haven't had him on. But it's like, magic is what we perceive as magic is just science that we've yet to understand. And but yet behind that, the science itself is, I would say, is magical. Like, the fact that we exist at all. So it's just all how you chop it up and how you make these distinctions, right? And whatever floats your boat to, how you choose to perceive it all. But yeah, man. Well, this has been awesome, AJ. You're such an inspiring individual, and I just love, your energy just announces that you have walked the talk and you really are, living, living as a living example of how to really commit yourself. And I just applaud the fact that you stuck with, we're like veterans. I mean, there's certainly people that have been around longer, I suppose. But 5+ years, both of us, I think we determined when I recorded forthcoming that's to be released on your show, that we started our shows like within a month or so of each other. If I recall. Yeah. So definitely connected, and it's an honor to be connected with you. What is the best way for those listening to connect? The podcast, of course, My Seven Chakras. Any other thing that you want to throw out to them?
Firstly, to acknowledge your point, I think definitely we are podcast brothers in that sense. And it would be my honor to breathe with you and to do a cold exposure with you someday, hopefully when this pandemic ends, to do it in person.
I'd love that.
And,
That'd be
to
great.
have fun in that way. It would not make me any happier than to, hang out with you in that sense. And I feel that there were some, just like indigo children are born at a certain phase. So I think they were like indigo podcasters that, started their podcast in that, within that vicinity of between April and November of 2015.
Yes, we made it.
I'm able to share that, that moment with you. And so it's definitely so nice to know that there are amazing folks like yourself who are creating podcasts and episodes and connections and meaning for so many people around the world. So I applaud you for that. In terms of how people can get to know me, firstly is the podcast. So available on all platforms. My Seven Chakras. 7 is a word. My Seven Chakras. And you can go to our website. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a voicemail. There's a voicemail option, but you can record your voice. And if you feel like you would like to attend any of our group breathwork sessions or even one-on-one, you can reach out to me personally at aj@my7chakras.com, aj@my7chakras.com. I reply to each and every email. I've not become as big as Brandon, but I'm a few steps back, but at least at this point, I am able to reply to emails and connect with you.
All you did there was make me feel like an asshole for not responding to everyone. No, just kidding. It's funny that you bring that up because I just talked about this yesterday on yesterday's episode. This sort of idea of comparison in any way, shape, or form. It's like we all are exactly where we're supposed to be. In one moment, from one perspective, I could be bigger, quote unquote, but from another perspective, like, I like hear how dedicated you are to your morning practice and the things that you're doing. It's like, oh, I can look at AJ and say, wow, you're bigger than me. And the fact that you are doing, you're more committed in some way, shape, or form. And maybe I'm more frantically working when I could be calming down more and taking more time for self-care and self-love. I always say we teach best what we most need to learn. And so it becomes at the end of the day, like sort of this, silly game of, at the end of the day, we're all right where we're supposed to be. And we all know that it constantly is a shifting sea that we are floating on in eternity. And, whenever I see someone too caught up on, like, a lot of times, and you can probably relate to this, there's a lot of people who are just looking, oh, how big is your following? How big is this? Yeah. And then those people are so caught up on that in a way that's sort of egotistical. I'm like, oh man, I always think of my brother says, the universe is a respecter of no man. Like, you are going to be humbled. Like, so I think bringing humility is so key, and you are just such a humble warrior. And, you are very big in my eyes. And so I just applaud and appreciate everything about you and the work that you're doing and your energy. Definitely an inspiration.
Thank you.
All right, everyone out there listening. Well, I do have, I almost forgot the final question. My final cliche question. And you get two of them. You had the elevator question. Okay, here you go. Ready?
Yeah.
In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to AJ?
Wow, 60 seconds or less.
And if
The
you go
meaning,
over, I probably won't penalize you.
to me, the meaning of life uh, is what you make of it. But the true meaning of life is to experience life. That's what I'm learning. Because Joseph Campbell once said, perhaps what we are seeking is not the meaning of life, but the experience of being alive. And we can, logically find the meaning of life and maybe seek some comfort through that. But unless we truly understand what it is to experience life, we won't know the
Yeah.
meaning of life. And to me, that just doesn't just mean traveling, which also is important, and meeting people and having deep connections with people through breath work, through cold exposure, through massage or whatever that could mean for you, but also going through challenges and difficulties and struggles. Those struggles are also part of the holistic experience because they can teach you so many things in life. So, the true meaning of life is to experience what it is that life is presenting you in the moment and lean into it, because that's how you will really derive the meaning of life. That was more than 60 seconds.
We'll let you slide this time, AJ, because you're so cool. But I appreciate you, my friend, and I look forward to connecting in 3D as you suggested. It shall be. And all of you out there listening, I appreciate you tuning your beautiful brainwaves into this episode. Definitely go check out My Seven Chakras for more AJ magic. Until next time, everyone, journey well. Love you so, so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Also, quickly, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you to download the Golden Key, audio or ebook, as my free gift to you at goldenkey.gift using the code POSITIVEHEAD. I also wanted to remind you that I will now be doing a live Q&A every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time on the new social audio app Clubhouse. I have really been wanting to connect and interact with all of you more for quite some time, and I'm super excited to now have 2 new ways to do it. First, if you're already on Clubhouse, be sure to follow me and click the little bell on my profile and select to always be notified when I go live on the Clubhouse app. And if you'd like to connect on an even more intimate Zoom gathering once a month, now you can do that too by registering at goldenkey.gift.